Self-care. No one thinks that I'm going to talk about spa days, right? Well, hello and welcome back to The Commonplace. My name is Autumn Kern and I'm really glad you're here. As you know from the intro and the title, we are going to talk about self-care. Now, I talk a lot about humanizing living. It's kind of a thing. I talk about the dumb phone, I talk about patterns of education, I talk about ordering your habits and the atmosphere of your home and what kind of living ideas you bring in. And all of that is because this has been quite a journey for me to learn how to live like a human. You would think we would just do it being humans and all, but actually we don't in the modern age. And it's not just the modern age, it's just that we have a lot of things that actually harm us as persons, but we're so removed from those healthier practices and limitations that we don't even realize it. And so I say this as someone who is not doing these things perfectly, but is trying to, because I actually tend more towards being a machine. And I think that's why the language of the modern world is so dangerous, because we talk about ourselves like machines, like computers. But I am someone who thinks that I can always push a little bit harder. I can go a little bit longer without sleep, a little bit longer without food. I can always get one more thing done. And so I am the exact person that the self-care influencers and products target. I am their ideal audience. So about 3 years ago, I wrote this piece about ordo amores in motherhood. I'll link it above for you if you'd like to read it. But the thing was that I felt like right after I had my third, the entire motherhood world was kind of screaming at me that I needed to learn how to love myself better. And what they meant by that was I needed to learn how to love myself first. That was it wasn't a new idea, but I just felt like it was really infiltrating everything right around that time of like, you need to care for you. You can't do anything else until you care for you. You have to care for yourself first. You deserve this. You should demand this. You should have this. And I kind of just wanted to scream back that my actual problem was not that I did not love myself first. It was that I needed to learn to love rightly overall. And loving rightly is this idea of ordo amores from St. Augustine. I talk about it in a lot of my work. And so I kind of, the brief definition I use is that you need to learn to love the right things at the right time and in the right way. That's having ordinate loves. They're in the right order. So I'll be honest, my knee-jerk reaction to self-care always has been this.
Please, no! No! No!
Or this.
Nope. Nope. Nope.
No.
Nope. No.
No.
Nope.
Nope.
No. Nope. 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 Nope.
I have just not been able to stand or get on board with what has been the undercurrent that I think sounds very selfish and self-centered and entitled and generally whiny. I've always bristled against it. But at the same time, I found that I just lived in the other ditch. My ditch was the fake martyr. The I will just go without food or rest or sleep or exercise or water because I'm doing my duty and my ideals. And that's also not taking care of a self. That's also not being a human. And so I want to kind of set here first the two ditches that I really see, and then we're going to get into what I think the humanizing life, which could be called self-care, I guess, actually is. But of course, the phrasing self-care is going to mean something in our cultural conversation that I don't want to talk about. And so let's set up the ditches and then we can kind of get to what needs to happen. So the first ditch, the I need to get a loan and do something in my exact circumstances that I've chosen and preferred, I think ultimately finds its root in feeling like the still you issue. That you at home with your kids, maybe your sins are coming up, you realize you're kind of impatient, or you struggle with anger, or you just think it's monotonous, or you didn't think you'd be doing this full time, this kind of like washing dishes, doing carpool, all of that. That can't really be you. The real you is when you're at the coffee shop, you go get to read, because note, I'm still talking about good things. Drinking coffee and reading books, great things. But they have to happen when you're all alone and in the way you want them to happen, because then you feel like you're still you. You and your core are still happening, which divorces you entirely from your ordinary life, which is actually you. Now, the other side is the fake martyr. And it's pretty simple. You just don't think you need to take care of yourself. You think you're doing something good. You're dying to self. You can put a lot of Christian language around it. You are outdoing others with honor. You're serving them, not even thinking about yourself. As if you're not an embodied being who just has needs. So let's get into like how I break this down and the categories I think will be helpful for you, because not everyone's going to need to fill their categories the same way. I'm gonna give you a couple of things that I've been doing that I think are really helpful, but they're gonna be more in the general sphere, like we all need to sleep. That's something that you should put some real emphasis on. But I usually think about the same things I use to think about my children when I think about, am I caring for them well? I think about their minds, I think about their bodies, and I think about their spirits. Now, of course, those interact. It's not gonna be like just a compartmentalized list in each direction. So you may, within those categories, use things like church services, community service, family, work, school, all the different things you do in life. And then they're going to kind of break down maybe each of those within each category of how do I take care of my mind, how to take care of my body, how to take care of my spirit in all the things I do. Now, there's something called a rule of life. If you've not heard about it, I have a mini-sode and a guide in Common House to kind of walk people through this. And then I also recommend Tish Oxenreider's Rule of Life course that she has, which you can find on her website. I'll try to link it above as well. And those are just helpful resources if you've never thought about making a rule of life, which sort of walks through these categories and helps you set limitations to help you thrive. Because ultimately, when you care for yourself as an embodied being, a whole person, you're actually submitting to the limitations of what God has designed for you and designed to be good for you. And so it's really an act of obedience. And that's why there's actually like a middle wise way through the ditches. And that's what I'm hoping to talk about today, because homeschool moms, you have a lot going on, guys. I raised my coffee cup to you, which I somehow still have not had yet today. But there's legitimately a lot on your plate, and it's not a pitying thing. It's hopefully not an overwhelming thing, but it is just legitimate. Like, you just have things to do, but it is just legitimate. And so having a course of action, understanding where your limitations are, because they're going to be different than every person. A high energy mom is going to be able to do maybe more things than a lower energy mom. That's fine. We're called to be faithful to God in our own lives. But let's break it down. Let's just get to it. Okay, mental. So you need living ideas. Your mind is a spiritual thing, and the ideas you engage with are going to change you. They're either going to nourish you, they're going to deplete you, they're going to heal you, they're going to harm you. We know this. We think about this with our kids all the time. What kind of books are they reading? What kind of shows do they watch? What are the friends that they have? What's the conversation around them? What do they pick up at the library? All of these things are really important to us for our kids, but it's actually really important to us too. And so you may be thinking like, oh yeah, well, I read, classic books because I'm a classical educator, and that's awesome. But do you spend a lot of time on your phone? What kind of ideas do you take in the most? If you looked at your hours in a day, you may spend 30 minutes reading a good book, but you might spend, I think it's on average like 4 to 6 hours a day on a phone looking at social media, looking at internet articles, things on the World Wide Web, thinking about emails and to-dos for work, feeling overwhelmed about all this sorts of stuff coming at you, instead of making sure that you understand there are limitations to how much your mind can take in, what your mind can take in, and when your mind can take it in. And all of these need to be considered. Another thing that I talk about a lot is something called a tiny mercy list. The tiny mercy list is something that I started doing in different seasons of suffering. I would just keep on Post-its, on scrap pieces of paper, these little jots of how I saw God being kind to me. It could be, a friend called me to check in. It could be that I got the closest parking spot on a rainy day when going to the store. It could be that my coffee was perfect. All these little things that could very easily be overlooked as just coincidental. And I started writing them down to help me cultivate gratitude, mental gratitude, heart gratitude, because I knew that otherwise I felt like God's hands were kind of hard to see in my life. Now, I have a resource for you, which is coming out very shortly, I think, or maybe just came out. And mentioning Tish again, it's actually Tish's new book called First Light and Even Tide. It's beautiful, like just actually beautiful. I have this thing where things that are marketed to women typically are very ugly and cutesy, and I don't like them. I don't like the fonts, I don't like the colors, I don't like all of the little like cutesy design and animal bits. It's hard for me, and so I often don't buy things that are like a gratitude journal like this. This is gorgeous. It's absolutely beautiful, and it's based on the practice of examine, which is a Catholic practice of having sort of what Tish calls bookends to your day. So they set you up with these habits of practicing gratitude at the beginning of your day and at the end of your day, which helps you shape the story you tell yourself about your day. It helps the things you think about God, the things you think about yourself, and it can give you helpful pegs, as I call them, to kind of make this a regular practice. So whether it's a tiny mercy list on a piece of scrap paper, or if you actually invest in something like Tish's new gratitude journal, which I highly recommend. I'm really enjoying this. And like I said, it's beautiful, and it's just 3 questions in the morning and 3 questions in the evening. So if you're like, I don't have time to add another hour of my day, no, sometimes I do this in 5 minutes and then just take the questions with me into my morning, or 5 minutes and take the questions with me into my sleep. So it is something that's actually like very much made for someone like you, mother teacher. And I had to tell you about that because I think it would be an excellent resource as you think about these limitations and this caring for yourself. Now, another thing is that you have to learn the posture of an encounterer. One thing that I've been really grateful for in my Charlotte Mason education is that I'm constantly being put on my heels that I need to learn. I don't rightly love something, that I don't know about something, that I need to be better at observing or attending or narrating, reciting, whatever it is, that I need to actually learn what used to be kind of commonplace habits in education, but now we need to get them back. And so one of that has been not thinking I'm a master of things, that I can take information, I know something, I can spit it back out, and I can prove something, and instead sitting with things, trying to be lowly, trying to be humble, and realizing that these ideas are, I owe a debt to them. I owe a debt to those who have been able to articulate them, pass them on. I owe a debt ultimately to God in this world that he has made that is so beautiful and lovely and I can delight in. And I think that is one of the best ways to care for yourself, is to learn where you are in the universe and where other things are, and then study them, be delighted by them. Nature is an incredibly healing thing for a person. And all of the things that I'm mentioning, I didn't say this, but all the things that I'm mentioning happen in the course of ordinary life. None of this requires that you be separated from your commonplace realities to get. And I think that's kind of the main thing, is that self-care or caring for an embodied self was always meant to be done in the way you live always. And so you may be gifted by your husband. You may be like, hey, babe, head out, take an hour, go get coffee, go read a book, take it, go, enjoy. But it's not going to have to only be pursued that way, or only experienced if you send your husband a schedule and be like, every Saturday I will be gone for 3 hours, I need it. That's not going to be the regular habit of caring for yourself. It might be something happens in a season, and it might be a gift given to you, but I really want everyone to know that you don't need a special life to care for yourself. There it is. That's what I wanted to say. So the things in your life are meaningful. And by having that posture of encountering, this is what I was trying to get to before I got sidetracked, is that you learn to see that everything you're doing has meaning, that the present reality is tied into this heavenly reality, that the things you are doing right now matter in a way you will never know. And that could be changing a diaper, that could be reading to a child, that could be writing the great next book. But all the things that you are doing matter. Nothing fits in a secular divide. And then lastly, you might mentally just need to declutter your space. This is really practical. If you're like me, you do not love looking out at a sea of chaos. There's actual science and studies behind belonging stress causing internal stress and overwhelm and mayhem. I know a lot of moms are like, I just need to clean this before I'm able to think and figure out what's going on. And so maybe just decluttering, honestly, it's better for your kids. They need very simple, natural material, open-ended types of toys. They don't need much else. We joke that our kids only play with our couch cushions and their bunk bed. They will just find other household items to create ships and a UPS truck and a store and a wardrobe and costumes and whatever. They do not ever touch their real toys, except for their Legos and their dress-up bin. That is pretty much it. And so I did this thing last year. I was trying to just get some stuff out of the space to kind of help with some sensory processing stuff for a few people in this family. And I put everything in the basement, and by everything, I mean it was one plastic tub. So I didn't when you hear things like that and you're like, we're drowning, it can be really easy to be like, we're getting rid of everything right now. And that's not what it was here, so I don't want to mislead you. It was one plastic tub that you would use for Christmas decorations. I put it in the basement for 7 months. No one asked me where anything was the entire time, and I just got rid of all of it in a yard sale. So I'm telling you, couch cushions, really get some nice ones, because they're going to be the toys that you all need. But really, if you can think about decluttering your space, getting things out that do not actually have a purpose in your home or are beautiful, what's the William Morris phrase that everyone wants to tattoo on their foreheads? It was all the rage. It's a good quote. I just can't remember what it is. Have nothing in your home that you do not find to be beautiful or useful. I think that's it. So yeah, just go with that. Just steal from William Morris. Now, on to the other things. So the body. Do not despise sleep, my friends. Mason actually says, do not despise your children. And she's talking about spending your time, your best of yourself in other places. So that could be with your friends. That could be watching TV. That could be working really late. That could be reading at the wrong time. All sorts of things. But consider that you are sleeping regularly. If you have a young baby, that's not going to be a thing that you possibly get. Even if you have some school-age children, that may also be difficult with nightmares and bedwetting and different things, but the goal is that you are trying to get sleep. So in my rule of life, I cannot say I will get 8 hours of sleep every night. It's impossible for me to get that for sure. And like, I can't demand that everyone leaves me alone for 8 hours, but I can say I will go to bed every night at 10 p.m. And then I have the best chance of getting the kind of sleep that I need. But I have to set that limitation. I'm gonna go to bed at 10. I'm not gonna make plans after 10. I'm not gonna work after 10. I'm not gonna do whatever after 10. I'm gonna go to bed. Sleep is highly important. Also food, water, those sorts of things. You also need to move your body. So one thing that I've been thinking about, and will maybe come out in a dumb phone series video, is that I live in a city, and while oftentimes I can think of all the things I don't like about that, one thing I have always loved is I can walk everywhere. And so this summer and this late spring, we spent a lot of time getting like our practitioners in the city, finding all of the local shops that we source things from, all of our different foods, but just the little markets, the coffee roaster, all these sorts of things. We have these local places for now. And so Tuesday afternoons, if you see our timetable, which is part of our summer series in Common House, you will see that Tuesday afternoon, we have about a 3.5 hour block that is called city errands. And that is because it takes us about 3.5 hours. And yes, my kids can walk this because city kids can walk. I do all of our grocery shopping. We hit up all of our local stores. We go to our library, our local bookstore. We do all these things. It's when I make our dentist appointment, a doctor appointment, like all these sorts of things for us that happen in the city because we can walk everywhere. That means I've organized a huge part of my errands, which I know not everyone can do, but think about how you could do this. I have organized a huge part of the errands that I have to run as the mom in the house into physical movement. Out of doors on beautiful streets with old architecture and big lovely trees. And I'm doing it with my kids, but we get, you know, a little bit of heat in the summer, a little bit of freezing in the winter, all things that are really good for your body. So I'm actually caring for my body, I'm caring for my mind because I value being rooted in a place. And I also really care about the relationships that I'm creating with the local shop owners in our area who care about the area that they do business in, right? And so we're building out some community aspect, we're getting out some personal movement, we're doing things that I feel good about, like ideal wise. And when you are trying to aim towards your ideals, it can be a really lovely thing to actually see that you are doing it, that like you're getting there, you're trying. That can be really satisfying and encouraging, and that can, I mean, you're aligning your life like in this harmonious way, and that can feel really good too. Of course, the spirit stuff is going to depend on your spiritual background, on your denominational background, your tradition, but experiencing the life of the church, like being a part of it, being prayerful, being at your worship services, serving others, reading the great books that have been passed down in your tradition, different things like that. Those are going to be hugely important as well for caring for yourself. You are a worshiper. You are a heart person, not a brain person only. Your brain is very important. Your rational mind is very important, but not the way we think of rationalism. Rationalism, the brain has to be informed by divine revelation, by the loveliest of ideas, by natural history and the natural order of God's world. And so it's much more of that medieval encounter way of seeing things, but it's often done, discipled, formed by the church. And that's going to be hugely important as well. And one thing that we've talked about a lot in Common House is liturgical living, if you will, like living out the church story or the story of scripture throughout the year. So you have ordinary time, and you have different seasons to commemorate different parts of Christ's life as you kind of walk with him, and then different things to focus on. It's really beautiful. We talk about having a liturgy binder in Common House. We have like a whole resource about it. So if you're totally new to it, that thread is always full for Common House. People are always on there, particularly as we start the school year and people start looking forward to different fasts and feasts coming up through the fall, and then of course into Advent, which is the first big one for a lot of people. That's something that can be really beautiful. And so again, this is still work a mom has to do. Yeah, these are still things you are doing, but you move in God's world. You are embodied, so you do act on the things that you love and the things you think, and repeatedly doing those forms you all in a direction. So I'm very, I think the phrase would be passionate, as the kids say on YouTube. I'm very passionate about understanding how to live like a human, because in doing that, which happens in your ordinary life, which happens with all of your children around you, actually cares best for you. Because it considers, how did God intend for my mind, my body, and my spirit to be cared for, and what limitations do I have to put on? Because that is something that keeps coming up to me. The modern world is so full of possibilities and opportunities and privileges and whatnots that you have to choose to say no to things that sound good in order to actually care for yourself. So consider how you can do that. Hopefully this frees you from the chains of modern self-care if you've not been able to get away on a cruise lately, or it gives you a nice barrier if you are like me and tend to ignore your own needs, thinking that you were doing something good. Oh, keep the Sabbath. I didn't say that. Keep the Sabbath. Plenty of you know what that means, but yes, every 6 days you were given a day off Take it, be blessed by it, keep it. So let me know if you have anything that you do that kind of fits in this category, how you order your days and order your life in order to actually treat yourself like a person and the people in your home like persons, so that we can all benefit from maybe some extra practical tips and tricks. And otherwise, I'll see you in 2 weeks.